Y'all seen this yet? Project Looking Glass. What you know about it? Check this out.
Some of you might know me because of a story I broke last March concerning something called the Guardians of the Looking Glass. Basically, what we had here is a technology that was built which would give those people who operated that technology, of course, a huge advantage because they could see
sort of human.
to exactly before this time, before this event takes place, for different reasons. What they found was that there are three types of beings. There's two J-rods, which were called P-52s. The P-52s were for 52,000 years in the future, and the P-45s were from 45,000 years in the future. And the P-45s weren't interested in helping us. They were just here to harvest genetic materials which they had lost over the course of tens of thousands of years of exposure. The P-52s also returned because they came back and they were trying to tell us our consciousness can affect our timeline. Not just the timeline, but also cosmic events. They were trying to tell us that the cosmic event, which is about to happen, can be affected by our collective consciousness. It's going to play out in two ways. It could end up with a timeline that prevails that's an organic timeline, where mankind will begin to wake up and en masse, and that we will change the trajectory of that course by raising our consciousness, and then there's going to be some event, and our change in consciousness will actually set in motion a positive version of how that event affects us. We've heard about ancient civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria or Mu, and they come and go. They always seem to end in some huge cataclysm or some destruction, some destructive event happens, society blows up. It's like a loop. Eventually, you would have to crack that loop. So maybe here is the chance to actually break that loop. And the other timeline they were talking about that may prevail is this transhumanist timeline. Along comes 2022, and it's been like 10 years since the last Looking Glass whistleblowers had been out there talking about it, Dan Bush and a few others. But this suddenly appeared, this group calling themselves the Guardians of the Looking Glass. We are the Guardians of the Looking Glass. We're a group of former intelligence officers and military officials who have come together to release classified information about future events to come. Our knowledge comes from our work on the Looking Glass artifact, first discovered in Iraq. During this time, the artifact was activated by the US military and connected to computers. We were able to see dozens of future timelines and the convergent singularities that led to two possible outcomes by the year 2030. In one outcome, humanity awakens and the current order is dismantled, and an event occurs, and instead of this event being negative, it is a positive one. In the other outcome, the current structure remains in place. A nuclear war takes place along with many horrible events. Then the event occurs, and instead of being a positive event, it's a negative one. I'm going to talk about what we can do about it, and that's got to do with the positive timeline. We have opportunity here. The J-rods, they told us that basically they were talking about these two primary timelines. That there is a future where a possibly pole shift related environmental catastrophe is averted and does not happen. And relative to this different timeline, the future that generated the J-rods as we know them will never evolve from our own, and we have taken a new path. So in this timeline, which also the Guardians saw, there is a probability of that happening, and so they talk about that as well. If the post-global pole shift environmental catastrophe does not occur, the benefits could be to alternatively produce a human consciousness, liberating evolutionary leapfrog, and a level of enlightenment among the masses that will produce a new set of future timeline trajectories that will compassionately steer the course of humanity into a virgin future of untold beneficial futures and heights, and in fact fulfill the original evolutionary directive to evolve consciousness of humanity to its optimum potential as future creative agencies in the universe. These messages that we got from these J-rods decades ago are trying to reinforce that idea, and now we're starting to, maybe the reason this came up now is because we're kind of at that last moment where we could make it happen.
Oh man, those are some very mind-dazzling videos, but for entertainment purposes only. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I'm very surprised by these things, man, because it seems like something familiar, something clicks a bell when you just watch these videos and keep entertained. Let's watch till the end and lots of love.
Crazy things caught on camera. This security camera has captured a dog doing something pretty extraordinary. Basically, he's sitting there minding his business when he starts walking over to this lady who is also minding her business on the sidewalk or on the little ledge right here. Now, he starts barking at her a lot, as if something is wrong, but there's clearly nothing happening. There's nobody like around this person, but the dog is very agitated, so he starts to drag the lady away from where she's sitting. And the lady gets mad, like, why is this dog dragging me away? She goes to sit back down, and the dog will not let her sit down, okay? He's going to keep grabbing a hold of her clothes and dragging her away from this one spot. And now, all of a sudden, where he just dragged her away from, this giant tree branch literally falls and crashes down where it would have been hitting.
Oh my god. Oh, that is crazy. How
Dr.
did that
Hacker,
dog
it
know?
doesn't appear as though you really paint a very pretty picture of white people in general insofar as you see white-black race relations. Can you expound on that, sir?
Well, interestingly, you use the phrase race relations. I don't think there are many relations between black and white people. What I would say very simply is that those of us who are born with this pigmentation have certain privileges, things we can take for granted, we have the safety, the security, so we don't want to lose this. Now, this also means that, and here's the unpleasant part, that so much of our safety, security status comes from putting down black people, saying we're not like them. We're Europeans. We're more highly evolved. We've got talents they don't have. And that's where you get, the flip side of this, which really is the ugly side of racism.
Mm-hmm. Well, how much does sex and sexuality really have to do with race relations, particularly between white men and black men?
Well, if you take white men and black men, let's take it two ways.
Okay.
If a white man is walking down the street and he sees a couple, a very attractive black man, really masculine, and with him a very attractive white woman, very white, we'll make her blonde, he looks at that woman and he wonders, this is the white man, what does she see in him? What do they do together? And it really drives us, up the wall, because she's a woman who could choose, a white guy, but she chooses a black guy. And that really bothers us. And as a result, what we want to do is some way take that black man away, because we begin to say, hey, is she having a better time with him, in various ways than she can with me? And so he's competition for us. And you know how people react to competition. Now, let me give you the second aspect, because your question to me was black men and white men. Okay, take a bunch of people in my city, white guys, and they get together, they have some beers, and then they go to Madison Square Garden, to watch the Knicks. Now, the Knicks are just about an all-black team. What are these white guys doing in the stand? Cheering on the Knicks. Here are these beautiful, glistening, hardly clad bodies, and these white guys are kind of cheering for them. Now, suppose I said to the white guy, hey, you got a thing about that? You attracted sexually to Oscar Ewing? He'd knock my teeth. Sorry, start again. You do the cutting. Oscar Ewing goes back to, he was one of Truman's bureaucrats.
Oscar Robertson.
Oscar,
That's okay.
Okay. You attracted Patrick Ewing, he'd knock my teeth out. And yet, there can be some kind of erotic, attraction there that no white real man would ever want to admit to. Hey, if I said to him, hey, you won the prize, you can go watch the Knicks in their shower room while they're showering, he'd really love that prize. There's a lot going on here that we don't even want to bring up below from the surface. There's a real irony there, and of course it's a contradiction. And what we're saying is, you're okay on the basketball court, you know, but we don't want to have you, for example, be an executive, you know, in an office where you have power not only over white women, but even over me too. You know, we're very much afraid of this. And as I kept emphasizing, the fear is here. We are the dominant part of the population. And yet the real fear that we have of black people goes very deep. And you'd be amazed, you know, I'd say this to you, maybe you wouldn't be amazed at how much we talk about you when you're not there. Again and again, we keep going on about crime and drugs and babies, you know, and guns and so on, as if, you know, it's driving us up the wall, but we have to keep on worrying and worrying and worrying, you know. So, you know, as I said in the talk, you've really got us under your control in many ways, but on the same hand, that doesn't, you know, pay off many dividends either.
Mm-hmm. I've struggled the whole night to try to pigeonhole you in some type of political category, if you will. And I often thought of people like Rush Limbaugh and some of the real reactionary conservatives in this country. How did it react to you?
I would simply say, I never indicate where I stand politically, left, right, up, down, whatever. I simply say that, and by the way, I'm a professor of political science, so I'm a student of politics. I say, the way a person behaves, that's their politics. You don't have to listen to them. I don't need speeches on how I'm liberal or conservative or whatever. Now, personally, as I've said, and I'm not doing a guilt trip, or maybe I am, but that's for you to decide. I simply say I take advantages of the privileges that come with my coloration, you know, with my racial identity and background. I go throughout the country, never have any problems. I live very nice part of the city. I go into a fancy French restaurant. I'm welcomed, you know. So, is that my politics? Well, in many ways it is. You know, it's.
What kind of reactions do you get from some of the conservative elements? Are they in concurrence with you officially or outwardly, or how do they react to you?
Well, actually, the conservative line now among whites is the Clarence Thomas position. So they say, "Oh, Professor Hacker, you are not appreciative of all the advances. You know, there's a bigger black middle class, you know, and all that." You know, in a way, conservatives talk a bit like liberals when they talk about advances that have been made. So they say, and in fact, the conservative position is, if more black people were like Clarence Thomas, you know, and did that, then there wouldn't be a problem. And
does that mean that if more black people would act like white people? Is that what that's saying?
Well, actually, Clarence Thomas is not so much acting like white people. He's acting like the kind of black person white people want a black person to be. But then again, white liberals say, in effect, why can't you be like Colin Powell? You know.
So it was really ingenious lock they have over here. Got your little spot there for your key, and you can have many different types of locks and many different people for access. Just drop it down. Goes there. And yeah. Do that. Rotates. So whoever has access can just unlock the key or unlock the lock and just lock it back up, and all done. Can't get to it. Pretty smart.
A consumer alert: the salmonella outbreak linked to onions is growing. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says contaminated red, white, and yellow onions have now sickened 869 people in 47 states. Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Vermont are the only states without cases.
So real recently, the FDA extended the onion recall, plus all onion powder products. Oh, and we can't forget about any onion dips. They may also get you sick. According to the FDA, the onion recall ended. Well, why in the hell were they still investigating? More than 1,000 cases of folks being sick from onions. For the past 15 years we've watched our food be contaminated with salmonella, and now it's our vegetables. And the only way to protect ourselves and families is basically to grow our own shit. Be aware of what you eat.
Why are some souls born with a signature vibration that seems offensive to the rest of the people on Earth?
No one is born with a signature vibration that is offensive, but it can seem off-putting based on what they're here to do. If you have a being whose vibration is extremely transparent and raw, it may rub a lot of people the wrong way who, in their belief systems and fear-based ideas, are not willing to look at the pure core of their own vibrations, and they may resent having it, so to speak, rubbed in their faces. So these beings who may come through with a very powerful, pure core vibration may be the beacons for many to use as a marker for when they are clear within themselves, because then they will be able to align with such beings and will not find them threatening or offensive or off-putting. So they can be used as pure markers of the true core frequency that all of you contain. There are exceptions to this, however. It may be that some come through not exhibiting the idea of a core vibration that is representative of their pure core, but an altered form that is designed specifically to ruffle feathers. These are the ones that may help others get in touch with their fear-based beliefs by acting as tricksters and clowns, so to speak, to put them in touch in unusual ways with things they may not have considered and may not enjoy going through, but nevertheless, that's their purpose, is to come through deliberately to upset the apple cart so that people will then put it back together in a new form.